Okay, we are going to go ahead and get started. Thanks for joining for our presentation. We're going to be looking at doing your own SharePoint document approval system today, and I'm going to show you that this can be quick and easy and fun to set up. And we'll kind of roll through the examples. I've got a few slides to show you, and then we'll get right to the SharePoint environment so I can show you just how this works. I just want to do some quick information before we jump into that. I wanted to give you a little background. My background is in Microsoft web development, and in the last several years, I've focused on SharePoint especially. And I was a customer of Infowise before working directly with them, and began using their tools and just found out that it really helps it to be extremely easy to build out solutions and custom forms and workflow and things like that in SharePoint using Ultimate Forms. So I really love these tools. I hope that comes through in the information I'm showing you today. It's a really cool tool set, something you can try out very easily. So I hope you'll do that. At the end of our presentation, I'll be doing a drawing for a embroidered polo shirt. That is for USA only, just because the shipping's a little tough outside of there. So stay on for that. You might get yourself a free shirt. Just some ground rules as far as our presentation. We do want your feedback. We do want your interaction. The way that you can do that is to use the questions feature in the GoToWebinar interface. And towards the end of the presentation, I'll try to answer some of those. If for any reason I don't get to that, we'll be sure to get up with you. So use that questions interface during the presentation if anything comes up that you want to get information on. Okay, so first of all, let's kind of map out our mission, if you will. We're going to be doing a document approval process. We're going to kind of have it built to our own specification. So this is one way. Of course, this can be modified. You can do things the way you want, but this is just a typical basic approval process. General concept here is we have somebody like an HR manager or something like that, and they have some documents and they need to get those approved by another employee, and they want a way to do that in an automated fashion and automatically using SharePoint for tracking and email notifications and things like that. So we have just kind of a basic process diagram describing what we want to happen. So the requester basically picks some documents which they want approved, and they select who needs to do that approval, and they submit that. We want that information logged in SharePoint and an email to be triggered automatically to notify that person to do the approval. Okay, so then that approver is going to go into a form from a SharePoint list, and they'll go ahead and give their approvals. And then we want to log that, just for diligence and tracking and things like that. And then also trigger an email notifying that that approval is complete to the requester. So that's the process that we're trying to map out. I'm going to do that in a visual interface. Okay, so just talking about Ultimate Forms a little bit, a lot about why I like these tools, and what you'll see is that things are fast and easy to set up, and I think you'll really like it. I do other kinds of development. I've done a lot with Power Apps and Power Automate and other tools like this, and they have their purpose, and in complicated situations you may use these tools, but typically it's a long process. It's more developer oriented, and I have to work with tools that are outside of the SharePoint environment, so there's a lot to it. So this is me kind of showing trying to work from out of the box can be a bit tough. So that's some of the headache that we try to solve. Ultimate Forms is available and works in the same way, both for Office 365, SharePoint Online, or for on-premise. So and really any kind of SharePoint environment you have, it's going to work. The only exception to that would be really old legacy environment, anything before SharePoint 2010, it's not going to work with that, but every other version will work. Okay, so just some general concepts as far as building this kind of system in terms of strategy. I try to work towards getting a system set up fast and quickly, and then modifying and adjusting according to that. So I like this idea of what I here referred to as MVP, minimum viable product. So get your system up and running quickly and basically practice with that, get your feedback and tweak it. Kind of an agile development process, if you will. So we want to move quickly, get our main form up fast, and then we want to apply some dynamic features. And we really would like to do this without doing any programming. That's a lot of the goal here. I know many of you cringe at the thought of having to work with coding or get into Visual Studio or things like that. And even as a developer, I don't want to have to mess with that. And that's one awesome thing about this. No programming or code whatsoever. We want to be able to change the look of the form real easy, without any hassle or headache, and do that right directly in SharePoint. And then set the structure and validation, include help, information, and visual out. So we want to do all these things really easily and quickly. So that's part of what we want to do. And this applies to any kind of tool you're going to set up, even outside of this document approval system. So generally, this is an iterative process. You are modifying your form, you tweak it, you test it out, put in a dummy record, something like that. And you'll catch something you want to adjust, and then you make a tweak, publish, save, and you just kind of keep going through the cycle until you get it exactly the way that you want. Okay, so that's it for the slide deck. I'll get out of there. I won't bore you with any more of that stuff. Okay, so here I am in a modern SharePoint site. It's just a regular modern team site, and I picked a nice banner image for the top of my page, and I'm just sitting on the home of that. So this system that you're going to see me demonstrate today is just set up on two regular old SharePoint lists. And we have one list which defines the people who are going to do approvals. That's our approvers list. And then we have another list which is for the requests. So on the dashboard, you can already see immediately this doesn't look like just a plain SharePoint list. We've got some visual indicators for status, and then I've got some color-coded description in regard to those approvals. So what I'm going to do initially is I'm going to demonstrate the user experience. I'm going to kind of show you how the system works first, and then we'll kind of go back behind the curtains, and I'll show you how easy it is to set all this up and what makes all this work. Okay, so what I'm going to do, first of all, is go into approvers. And in this case, what you're doing is basically just putting in a record for each approver. It only needs to be one time. So this would be a list of your employees. And I do want to mention, by the way, after this webinar, I am going to upload this as a template to the Infowise site. And I'll show you just exactly how you can download and install it. So you can actually download, install, and see this solution exactly as I'm demonstrating and play with it in your own environment right after our presentation. Okay, so I'm going to go into this approver, Vladi, and we just have a really basic, simple, clean form that we're working with. Okay, so Vladi is the person I want to be doing the approval, and I just put in my own name, and I want Vladi to do an approval for 3 documents. Okay, so this can be dynamic. Notice that if I change the account, I have fields shown or hide. So we have some dynamic aspects to that. So that's pretty cool. And the concept here is I just want to provide links to these documents. So I'm not attaching them. Instead, I'm just making a reference to the document that this employee will review. Okay, so here's just some dummy forms that I've set up and that type of thing. So the idea is, okay, we'll do HR Form A, and what I do is go in here and just through the context menu, I'm just getting the link to that. So I'll copy that, and then I need to put that URL in there, and then obviously we don't want to see that gobbledygook in a form. That's not very user-friendly. So what I can do is just type out the description. You'll see how this all fits together in a second. Okay, so there's one form. Let's find a couple more. We'll do this one, HR Form 4, copy the link, just like so. Give it a nice friendly name. Obviously, these aren't great names. They're just example documents, but hopefully you get the gist of how that would work. And then we'll do one more. We'll do HR Form 1. And so the idea is this is a set of things. You can imagine this kind of situation in like onboarding, for example. Okay, I don't know why it wants to spend a long time thinking about that. Let's try that again. There we go. And then, again, I just put this in here. Okay, so basically I've defined what I need to be approved, okay? And also, I want to do some tracking on this, right? We want to make sure this went out. We want to track this later. If the HR manager checked a week from now, they want to make sure that Vladi actually got this request, that kind of thing. I want to see that. So at the bottom of this, I kind of have a checkbox set up as a trigger for me. And by checking that, it's actually going to generate the approval request, which will be in the other list. So I'll go ahead and do that. So I'm going to save out of there. What I want you to notice is that you see these field names. Now, when I make the request, I have it set to reset that. See how those all just blanked out? That tells me that the action triggered. And I needed it to do that because I may send more requests to Vladi later on. It's just a form for this employee from which I can trigger the request. I want to show you the logging part of it because that's really important, right? We need to be able to track this and see. So you can tell that Will Cooper at 11 to 12 a.m. generated this request, right? I can go in the system. A year from now, I can go back and see that this was requested. So that tracking is important. So that tracks that the request was sent out as was needed. And that'll just append to that log anytime that I want to. Okay, and let's go to the approval request list. Okay, and there it is. You see the new request. Let me check on something. I'm going to close one of the tabs. Okay, so there's the new request, and what will happen is Vladi's going to get his email and it's going to tell him what to do here, right? So he's going to go in and you see these green and pink boxes and that type of thing. Now, obviously, in this type of situation, we want it to just be as simple and easy and seamless for that user to use as possible. So all that they're going to do is get an email that links them directly to the form. And they just go in here and if you remember, there's that long URL. So what we did is we made it just kind of make a hyperlink for us. So this is kind of, I guess in my mind, kind of dummy proof. There's kind of no wrong turns you can make here. It's very simple, right? Here's my approval request. It's assigned to me. I'm acting as Vladi at the moment. And then who it came from. It's automatically setting a due date for me. And I have a status of request on this. So I need to approve these three things. So if I click on that, it links me directly to the document. So we're really leaning on the SharePoint form to do that for me. So there I've just got a simple drop down. So as the employee, I can just go in here and, let's say that I'm just approving the first form if I have a series of them. Okay, so initially I just have blank boxes, but when I do that, it triggers some actions in the background, okay? So what's going to happen is that progress bar changes because it's tracking the approval count in the background. And the status updates. So I've got in progress for my status now. And then I want to show you what the email looks like. That part's important. Here, let me pull that up. All right, there's the email request. So that's what the employee gets. And so it includes the key information. It tells them when it's due, has the name of the person who requested it from them. Nice and user-friendly. We've got an image at the top of that, and then it's got a link directly to that approval form. So that's automatically triggered. We have an email template system, and I'll show you that in just a few minutes. So that is a part of this. So we have our in progress approval, and we can keep updating those. So let me go back in there and do more of those. Okay, so I think one of those is just taking a little bit of time to process, but I think it's going through. Okay, so what's going on behind the scenes is it'll update this box. And if I have, if it's set not approved, notice I have like a different color that can show up. So on this one down here, you can see that it has the name and the date time stamp to show you when that happens. So you have a nice visual indicator to make it really obvious as you're going through that. And then at the tail end of the process, once they do all those approvals, what we're going to have is it's going to automatically set to complete. So that's just kind of generally how those are triggered. So let me show you a little bit about how the setup goes to trigger this process. So when you have this app installed, I'm in the Office 365 SharePoint Online version. This is the hub of settings, if you will, that you work from. So it's right in immediate proximity, which is really important. I'm not having to open up another external tool or go into some other developer environment. I can just do this directly from SharePoint. And when I go to Form Designer, it gets me into this nice, easy drag and drop interface. Okay? So what I can do is basically just drag controls onto the form, and I can change the look and feel of the form. I can do validation, stuff like that. We're just going to go kind of take a look at that. So you can make the look of this however you want. With out-of-the-box SharePoint, you don't have any kind of form building tool in SharePoint, not directly in SharePoint. There's Power Apps. As I say, that's very developer-oriented. Generally, it's a long process to do that. Whereas right here, I'm in SharePoint, and I can make adjustments to this form really quickly. Basically, each of these are controls. You can move them around, reorder them like so. I could do things like change the background color on the form. And notice I'm not doing any programming or anything crazy like that. You know, if I want a background color on my form, I can just pick a color, write a note up here, and then I just save the setting, and it's immediate. I see that real time on the form, and I can just publish that out, and it would update right away. I don't want to make the form lime green, so I'm going to jump out of there. But that's where you build your form. You can do multi-column forms. You can do tab forms, that kind of thing. And then another aspect to it is the logic, the business workflow, that kind of stuff. And that operates from this actions interface. So what you're able to do here is basically define triggers and then automate things that you want to update in SharePoint according to those triggers. So that's done through this business logic section. All right, so it's thinking about that. While I'm waiting for that to load, I just want to mention a couple of things about accessing this. So as mentioned, immediately after our presentation, we'll have a template that I will load into our Infowise interface. And the way that you can get access to that is to go to the Infowise site, and under resources, if you go to tutorials, it'll bring you in here. And the link under getting started called creating a site from a business solution template, that's what you want to take a look at. Basically, it gives you the steps to download that. So that'll just upload it, and you can play with the example that I'm doing, and then you can modify it and turn it into whatever you want. So you can just follow those instructions. Also, I should mention, in order to use these tools, what you want to do is go into the Quick Start, and you can do our trial app. It's the full app. There's no limitations at all, other than it's just limited to 30 days. And if you go in here under the Quick Start and download, for SharePoint Online, you just go to Office 365, and then you download the app, and you can follow. There's a really awesome video, and it just shows you in a few minutes how to get that installed on your site. So I just want to mention those things before I forget. Okay, let me bounce back to what I was showing you as far as how you set these things up. So I needed some triggers in here. So if you remember, I have that drop down, and what I wanted to do is have a SharePoint update according to an update from that. Okay, so basically it's a listener, if you will. So what I wanted to know is in the situation that that field, approval 1, gets changed to approved, after change equals approved, I need SharePoint to do something for me. Okay, so what I want is to have it update this. So I put a little formatting in here to make it look pretty. But basically what I'm doing is having it log the name of the user along with the date timestamp to say that they did approval. So I did one of these 6 actions are all nearly identical, right? I'm just kind of doing the same thing over again. I've got 3 for the approve and then 3 for the not approve, and that makes it turn into like a pink box instead. And then I have other things where I want to know if we're complete, do we get all the approvals, that type of thing. How am I going to know that? It's based on the number of approvals that were requested, and then I have some logic in the list to check that. So what I'm looking for is when the approved count is equal to the approval count. And if that's true, I just tell SharePoint, okay, then go ahead and change the status to complete for me. And that's really as complicated as it gets with the actions. You're defining a trigger, and then you define something that you want to happen based on that trigger. And you just do it by working your way through those tabs and using those drop-down configuration settings areas, but no code or anything like that. I really like visual dashboards and visual management and that type of thing. You might have noticed those icons and things like that. Those are set up by just taking a choice field, and then it can be modified, and you can pick icons for it. Really fast, fun, easy to set up. Basically, you just come in here, and then I can pick from any of 250 icons, and I can make I can pick whatever icon I want for these. So I just kind of picked stuff that I thought would look good for that. I save it out, and that'll just make it look that way, both in the form and also on the dashboard. There's tons of tools in here, way more than I could possibly get into. But the thing that's awesome is that you can get started with it really fast. So you can start taking advantage of it right away. But as you sort of become a ultimate forms ninja, there's just tons of depth to it, and you can build enterprise level solutions with these tools, which is awesome. The next thing I really should show you is the email alert system, because of course that's a part of what I'm doing. So that's under the business logic. If I go to alerts, I'll just talk to you a little bit about how those are set up. So if I go into the mail templates and I want to do a new one, I've got a couple set up for document approval, and it's just a visual editor tool. Okay, so I just go in here and I can do highlighting and control the font size and things like that. But what's interesting is I can insert dynamic information. So on the right side, I can pick from fields in that list, and that's how I'm able to insert the name of the person it's been assigned to and indicate the name of the person who was requested by, stuff like that. And then I can insert images and have links like directly to the edit form, that type of thing. So you have a nice template system that defines what's in the email, and then what you're able to do is pair that up with the actual trigger. So much like the actions, which I was just showing you, I just put in some simple configuration information to tell SharePoint when to send out that email. Okay, so in the recipient section at the moment, I just have it going explicitly to me, but what you're usually doing here is change this where it would go to the column. Okay, so if I'm doing a new request, what I would want to do is send it to assigned to. So once again, this can be dynamic. So you automatically trigger that email. I would naturally like to copy the person who requested that, so I can add them in there just like that. And then you can configure the from address and things like that. And then I need to define when should that go out. In this case, it's really easy. It's just when a new request gets generated. So whenever that new request comes in, it's going to be automatically triggered. It'll go out. Under when to send, I have immediately. That's the normal setting. And then all I got to do is pick the template. So if you remember, I define my template. It shows up in a drop-down list, and I just save that out. And that's all I have to do to configure that. So email triggers and templates are awesome and really easy to set up in conjunction with these, with this type of system. So basically, that's kind of the process we walk through. Let me kind of go through and talk about some next steps and things you can do. One thing I do want to mention, we do have as part of using these tools, we have a really awesome user-friendly Kickstart training. And in fact, we're just in this next week going to be publishing out a new version of that, which is updated to feature kind of some of our new settings. So that's something you could look at and help you get going with our tools. We do have lots of other training content. I mentioned the tutorial section. There's lots of walkthroughs, especially the getting started section will help you a lot. So I do want to say that unlimited support is provided with the product license. So if you do happen to pick up these tools, we're ready and able to support you with any questions or any roadblocks that you hit. If you need more questions about your setup or you want to ask some more questions about the product, you're always, of course, welcome to set up a one-on-one meeting with us. On our homepage, if you do request a demo, you can put your information in a form and we can schedule a meeting with you if you'd like to meet with us one-on-one. Definitely very happy to do that. Let me take a look at questions. 1 second. And we'll do a shirt drawing here in a second. I did promise that. 1 sec. The interface is being a little finicky with me. I'm trying to resize my question box. I can read it. The slides don't really have a lot of information. I think somebody asked about that. Okay, Jessica, I know you had a question on publishing the form, so that's kind of covered in the getting started section, but that's kind of the best thing is to walk through the tutorials on that. That'll help you out a lot. Let's go ahead and do the drawing for the shirt. I did promise that we'd have that. So what I'd like you guys to do is go ahead and put a number in the question interface and go to webinar. And what I'm going to do is pick out a number here in about 30 seconds, and one of you guys is going to get a shirt. So go ahead and do that now. All right, we've got a winner. Mark Spencer, you were closest with your number. What I'd like you to do is drop me an email. And by the way, if you guys have any questions, you can send those to sales@infowisesolutions.com. Anything related to this webinar, just in general about Infowise. My email is willc@infowisesolutions.com. Mark, you can send me your shirt size and address, and I'll get that off to you today. So again, I'm going to load this. Let me show you real quick how you're going to be able to access the template I've set up. I think you guys have some questions. You want to see a little bit more about how that works. In our design interface, there's a button that you're going to see on the upper left, and it's called Install Business Solutions. That Getting Started tutorial covers this a little bit. I just wanted to show you where it is. And there's two tabs here. You've got Infowise Solutions and Infowise Webinars. Naturally, this one will show up under Webinars. So I'll have that out there just a little bit later today. In terms of feature set and things like this, you can customize and add on to this however you want. So in a certain sense, you should think of this as the start of your approval system. So this would be kind of your core system, and then you can redefine and get it to do whatever you want because you, of course, have access to customize the form and settings and things like that. So that's really the key aspect of this. But this kind of streamlines that process, gets you out of the blocks and running quickly without having to figure out everything from scratch. So That's pretty much what we had to cover today. We have a lot of examples out of on our site of different types of solutions. So if you want to take a peek at that, if you're curious about other types of solutions, please let us know. The very most important critical thing for you to do is to get the trial installed. And so let us know if you have any difficulties with that. But again, you just want to click on the getting started when you're on the Infowise site. That'll get you where you need to go. Go to the quick start and installation. And as I mentioned, it's the full software, so you can see exactly how it works. You know, rather than take my word for it, you play with the tools, try customizing and building your own forms, and start to see how to use that. And then from there, obviously, we can answer questions or help you out at all. So that's what we had to cover today for our document approval system. I'm going to stay on, I'm going to be on mute, but I'm going to stay on to answer some questions for a little bit. So if you have more questions, don't go away. But otherwise, thanks a lot for joining today, and hope to be working with you guys on the Ultimate Forms.